Hello, and welcome to another fully live Q&A episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody Kinzie. I am a security researcher at Varonis, and today I'm going to answer your Q&A hacking-related questions. I'm going to be here to kind of talk to you about what I'm working on this week. You might have noticed I was gone on Friday. It's because, I was just in the mood to get out. It's fall here. I had some friends in town, and everything that I did on my new computer was generating a security operations center alert. So I took a little bit of time because I almost got locked out of all my accounts, and now it seems like I'm back on track. If you've ever tried to do basic networking stuff on like a managed company laptop, you probably know how terrifying that is to your like blue team or anybody who's trying to make sure that laptops don't get hacked. Often the same tools that you use to like manage things, for example, are often the same tools that hackers do because of the living off land principle. So back and happy to be back. I have the chat up today, so if you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer them. But I'm also going to talk a little bit about some stuff that I'm working on, and one of those things is a honeypot. So I'm going to pop up my screen real quick, and I found that when I did a search for like really basic, easy honeypots, there were some Arduino programs that are great for people who have a little bit of experience with C++, but CircuitPython, my preferred language, like doesn't really have any, wait, did I misspell that? No, didn't really have any results. There was like one sort of guide for an ESP8266, but I was like, this is such an easy opportunity because so many of these microcontrollers that I work with have everything necessary to create a honeypot. So my goal for the end of the month is to make a honeypot workshop where somebody can take a microcontroller and very quickly turn it into a honeypot, which emails them as soon as somebody on your network starts poking around. Also, hello, anime lover. Hopefully you are a fan of Ghost in the Shell. Anyway, what I'm going to create is something that teaches people about what a honeypot is and also, what the basic steps are to make one. And I have to confess that I really, really, really used to enjoy watching like Kippo or like Cowrie honeypot videos, if you've ever seen those. So I have one right here. This was one of my favorite, when I was learning Linux and stuff, this was one of my favorite videos that kind of inspired me to learn about honeypots and think of them as interesting. Because as an attacker, like I don't really think it's like that cool. Well, I mean, as someone who was studying to be an attacker, I didn't really think it was that cool to have a honeypot until I got to see that I could judge other people's like Linux skills via trapping them in impossible situations. So this is a very traditional kind of style honeypot where you pretend to be an exposed system on the internet and you let people find you via various automated scripts. And in the end, these people attempt to exploit that system according to their level of knowledge. Now, there's a lot of professional companies that will actually do this in order to see what kind of attacks are going on. So they'll pretend to be a victim so that they can find out who's doing these attacks or what kind of payloads are being deployed. And then there are people who are just like individuals who spin up, something for their first time and are just trying to hack a computer. And these are truly chaotic. These are often like people who barely know Linux, who are trying to like do some very, very, unsophisticated attacks. They're trying to just like download, like Metasploit or something like directly, I don't know, from a GitHub or whatever. It's not very sophisticated stuff. So what a Kippo or Cowrie honeypot does is it creates a fake system that allows them to try to log in. And then we get to have a pretty good look at what they're doing. So we can capture payloads and learn about what type of exploits they're trying to do. We can do all sorts of cool stuff in order to like observe how an attacker acts. And the funny thing about like these Cowrie and like Kippo honeypots is you can really watch people get super mad. So what's funny about these early honeypots is like, they allow you to create impossible systems that like everything seems to be going well, and then like it kind of pulls the rug out from under you. So the funniest thing about being like a beginning Linux user and then going out on the internet and like trying to do something bad is getting tricked into interacting with a fake system that's like crumbling your limited knowledge of Linux by just behaving badly at every turn. So what I mean is like, it'll just pretend that certain basic commands aren't installed. It'll like allow you to install things, but then like the installation will fail. So like the attacker will like waste all this time trying to like troubleshoot the system and figure out like what is wrong with this broken computer. And I think that's really funny. Trapping hackers that are, malicious hackers in realistic looking systems that kind of like adapt to confound and confuse them is one of my favorite ways of both knowing someone is attacking and also wasting their time. So there's lots of like companies that do this, and there's even some that like automatically generate new environments for attackers. They like spin up infrastructure for the attackers to infect. So they think that they've like attacked this like full big system, but instead it's a maze that's like reacting to them. So okay, let's be clear. I don't want to go exactly that far when it comes to honeypots. Like I think that, honeypots are a very, very useful tool, even on a basic level. So aside from these, I guess, guilty pleasures that I used to indulge in, like watching like beginning hackers just get absolutely stuck, confused, mad, and annoyed in these like fake honeypots. Like I kind of want to make my own version, but I want to make it even more basic so that anybody, like anybody in this audience or anybody who has the ability to plug a microcontroller into their computer could set this up. So, all right. So that is an example of Cowrie. And one question is there any open source code? Oh, wait, sorry. I'm in the wrong studio. Is there any open source code or program that makes it easy to deploy something like that? So nowadays, I would say setting up something like Kippo or Cowrie is like a lot easier than it used to be. You can like probably set up an instance of this using like, I would imagine like Google Cloud Shell or something like that might be a good way. I don't know if Google's going to like you doing this, but like getting like a VPS or getting like a virtual server to spin up and run Cowrie on seems like it is a lot easier and cheaper than it used to be. So Cowrie and Kippo are still around, I believe. They emulate Linux-based SSH systems, and they still catch a lot of beginners. But again, most of this traffic is now automated. And a lot of the time, like you don't get the good stuff. So like people can tell what a Kippo honeypot or what a Cowrie honeypot looks like. They start sniffing for it. And more advanced users, they won't waste their time in a honeypot because there are very visible signs for people who know what they're looking for. But for catching beginners or for catching people on your network, I still think that these are a great layer of defense. So oh yeah, and it absolutely could be a very fun CTF. But yeah, so just imagine this. You're an attacker. You hit a system, you're like, I'm in. This was almost too easy. And then everything's open. There's all these juicy files. Like everything seems like a hacker's dream, like you've got like all these things that are very obvious targets, lists of passwords and like all this other stuff. But the whole time that you're going through, you're interacting with a system that's either like Cowrie or Kippo, relatively static, and it's just hobbled in ways that make it impossible for you to really do anything meaningful, or in some of these more advanced cases, expanding and reacting to your actions. So you'll like grab a list of passwords and try to do a password spraying attack. And these like really advanced honeypots will like spin up their own environments as you attempt to log in and then let you into like one of them. And then you can use those to connect to the others. And like it basically allows a blue team to analyze the pattern of attack in this virtualized environment. Of course, there's always the risk the attacker could break out. And that's, of course, with Cowrie and Kippo and stuff like that, like, you want to make sure you're exposing something that like you wouldn't mind losing. But a lot of people do this on like a Raspberry Pi or something like that. It's just like, do you want to put it on your home IP address? Exposing it to the internet is really the tricky part. Because let's say that you put up a Cowrie or a Kippo honeypot and somebody exploits it, like, okay, cool. Now you have an infected device like on your network. Like unless you planned really well, you might be in trouble. No. Is it just playing my own video? Get out of here. All right. So let me talk a little bit about what my plan is. So I think I had a lot of you kind of see the end result of what we did for DEF CON. So my team got together and we successfully made a really, really cool, let me turn this off for a second. We made a really cool like laser tag style game for DEF CON. It went really well. We sold a bunch of them and it was cool. It was really awesome. The plans for that were like 3 months in advance. And anytime I come up with a new idea, it often starts with a very rough and very basic sketch. So for the honeypot that I'm working on, I'm just going to show off what that plan looks like. This is the design as of now. Like it's a 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of step connection, and a little bit of like initial like art ideas. But this is the kind of stuff that eventually turns into like an actual prototype. Oops, I don't know what I'm doing here. So yeah, if you want to look forward to one of these projects, this is, again, probably maybe like 2 months out before this is actually finished. But this is how, when I'm working on a design or a prototype for a really simple concept like a honeypot, this is how I kind of plan that out. And this is just like sketched out on a tablet. I'm going to meet with, well, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to create proof of concepts for each one of these 4 steps using Bing AI and ChatGPT 4. Admittedly, going back and forth between the two is good because right now Bing has the ability to like read documentation live on the internet, whereas ChatGPT, the only way I can really do that is using the ask your PDF or something extension where it's able to read a PDF and learn based off of that. The limitation that ChatGPT can't like go on surf the internet and like pull in information is a little limiting sometimes. So I've actually been doing prototypes with things like this by sketching out the basic idea, writing it out, sending it over to the Bing AI and having it like rough out like ugly but working code, and then sending it over to ChatGPT 4 to improve the code and make it work a little bit better and do some troubleshooting. So yeah, I found the cycle to be pretty impressive. If you haven't tried prototyping code with AI, then this is the first step that I usually do, the step that requires like a human. But at some point, I feel like I could probably just feed ChatGPT this, and it would like figure it out. We'll see. Yeah, so some basic ideas for the CircuitPython based honeypot. As I said, I did a search for this. I did not find many results for anybody else doing the same thing. So if you know of a cooler, interesting honeypot, especially if it's for CircuitPython, let me know. I know there are some for Arduino, but I'm going to be working with a microcontroller that has a lot of cool abilities like native USB. So being able to like pop up as like a USB drive so people can just like fill this out and it doesn't require any like fanciness, I think is the best move here. So anyway, look forward to prototype coming out that. How do I feel about Bard? So I have been less than impressed by Bard so far. Yeah, that's pretty much how I feel about Bard. I've been trying to use it for code. I've been trying to use it for some other things, and I found that it hallucinates or gives me wrong answers like a little bit more than ChatGPT 4 does. So I have used it only in very limited ways, just because, yeah, I did not find it to be very accurate. The code that it produced did not run very well, and it fell into the same kind of like hallucination territory where it would like imagine libraries that like don't exist, which was frustrating. So I might give it a try again. I understand they've like rolled out some improvements to make it better with code, but the last time I tried it, it was not producing working code for CircuitPython. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing like some more competitiveness in the space, because I just had to do like a whole video on how much Anthropic's Claude AI hallucinates data, because it like spit out a bunch of very realistic seeming information when I was trying to do some war driving, and it was all wrong. It was imagining all of it. I find ChatGPT good for finding bash one-liners with some editing on my part. That's incredible. Yes, that's exactly what it's for. If you can rough out like exactly what it is you want it to do, and the scripting language is common enough for it to be like well-trained on it, then ChatGPT for me has been really great at writing like conversion scripts or like other things that I need for just like day-to-day like Linux things. So if I want to make a GIF, on like a Linux computer, like ChatGPT can make like a bash one-liner to convert that in like the right size and everything and give me the parameters I need to adjust it. It's actually really great for that. I found that head-to-head, I believe the Python scripting was working a little bit better than the bash scripting when it came to accomplishing the same task in a Linux environment. That being said, when I kind of tested this out a couple of months ago, and of course this is an evolving field, things are changing really fast. But again, I was trying to like convert one thing into another thing, and I found that if I asked ChatGPT the same request, like with the same logic constraints, like it worked out of the box with Python, whereas like with Bash, like things were a little bit squirrely. So yeah, just a little bit of personal experience. Let's see. All right. I tend to not use AI when actually making the code. It's too unreliable. And if you're doing something actually interesting, it's novel and different enough from the training. Yeah, I think there's a lot of controversy around like how much you should use AI in code. This is something that a lot of people, this wasn't possible or a good idea until very recently. And it's only now that a lot of developers are learning that they can build like all the building blocks they need and string them together very quickly and offer like cheaper work or more efficient work, that the conversation is coming up more and more. So for me, when I'm making a proof of concept, or if I'm making something that's, for example, deliberately vulnerable, this is a dream, you know, because I can have it look at like something that I already like. I can have it adapt it or strip things away. The only thing is it fights me on certain things because it's programmed, for example, to not make something that's deliberately vulnerable, even if I want to teach a lesson based on that. So I have to do a little bit of like prompt manipulation, but I can generally get it to do a lot of what I need it to do. Now, if I'm trying to do a complicated project, things get a lot more messy. You have to have a strategy, and even then, it takes a lot of human knowledge to make sure you get a good result out of this. So an example would be working with Claude. I gave it a CSV file, it read the CSV file, and I told it to find me data based on it. And it would actually need to be like kind of running like a Linux system and have the ability to execute programs in order to properly do that. So it stated all the different steps that would need to be done in order to properly clean up the data and give me the information I wanted. And then it gave me a facsimile of what that information should look like. But that's the problem. If you're not explicit, sometimes these AI programs will like they'll give you the output that you're expecting, but not the output that you want, if that makes sense. So they'll give you something that looks realistic, that looks like good data, but they don't actually run the background calculations or any of the stuff that they need to come to the right conclusion. And I found that blind spots like this really do require a human in the loop to be able to make sure that an AI program doesn't have an oversight that either makes it vulnerable or makes it accomplish a goal you weren't intending. That's why I think that some of these projects like AutoGPT, I don't remember if you remember AutoGPT, but it's basically having a ChatGPT instance decide on the task it needs to do to accomplish something more complicated. So something that requires multiple steps. And then taking each one of those steps, getting the result of them, and then making the next step based on what happens in the step before it. So it's a way of kind of making these systems be able to stop and have points of reasoning along the way instead of just having it kind of go as a blind shot. And that's interesting to me because it can correct some of these mistakes, but again, it involves like more human interaction. So I use AI a lot. I'm hoping that once my work computer gets out of jail for downloading Nmap and other things, I will be able to show off some of the really interesting AI tools that can do everything from face swapping to voice faking, to image generation for like deep fakes. Like it's really interesting to see what's possible with like free and open source things and just like a little bit of hardware. So yeah, looking forward to showing off some of these because hackers are really interested in AI tools. Frankly, there's an increasing amount out there. And one tool I want to shout out again, let me bring my screen back up, would be Pinocchio.computer. Great. Pinocchio, yeah. So if you haven't tried this out, or if you're interested in trying out some AI tools, I have been using this AI. Oh, hello, James. Nice to see you. I've been using this AI browser to install apps in order to try out things like illustration generation. I use this to create fake companies for like OSINT purposes. So, you know, if I want to create like a bunch of like, you know, like websites that are like mock-ups for a fake company and then do a workshop where people have to track them down and, you know, string the pieces together, I can create an entire fake brand in like a couple of minutes with illustration diffusion, because making logos, making other stuff, like it's really making clip art super easy. I no longer have to go to like a clip art, you know, website or whatever and try to find stuff. I can just generate everything I need with this. Face Fusion, I've tried this out. It works really well, honestly. It's a layer of different AI tools to reliably do face swapping. And what I've learned about this is typically you're actually working with like 2 or 3, maybe even 4 different AI models that are taking one input and converting it into an output. An example, Face Fusion, there's the actual face swapping, which looks terrible. And then there's the upscaling and the detailing that adds information back that's destroyed or altered in the process of swapping that actually makes it look like a passable photo. So there's actually 3 different things that are going on in one transformation. And I think that's really cool to learn how these AI models are working together to create better results. Haven't tried this one. I'm in the process of trying this one. So like phishing attacks that rely on sounding like someone or being able to reliably mimic someone's voice, especially like an executive or something, are key to being able to pull off some of these like whaling attacks or attacks where you're trying to impersonate a specific person to somebody who might know them. So I am currently trying this one out just because it seems like a good time. And yeah, it seems kind of like something that hackers would eventually probably abuse, honestly. And there's a lot more here. So I haven't used all of these, but I have used Stable Diffusion. And this version is okay. It doesn't download, I mean, it doesn't create like photorealistic anything at the moment. So there are some differences out there between things like Stable Diffusion, which you can run on your own computer locally. Gets a little bit hot, but you can make your own stuff forever. And then things like Midjourney, where you basically need to like join on Discord and like, you know, you can't run the model locally yourself. Does anybody else in the chat have large language models running besides Bio 1? Because I feel very cool that I'm able to run like some of the like Meta, for example, AI models like Llama and Alpaca, and then also some of these cool Stable Diffusion things. So yeah, if you have found some interesting large language models or some interesting AI tools, let me know, because I'm constantly looking for them. I like to, as a hacker, kind of like stay up to date with what people are using and what kinds of things are actually effective. And I was pleased to see that this is a relatively easy way for people to get started with AI tools. All right, so update on the Ziggurat. I've been informed that that's what this is. So this was a project that I think I touched on last week. It's something where it uses a speaker and an amplifier on the inside to make it so that when you touch one of these conductive copper points, it changes the tone of the synth. Very cool. So last week, I worked on this relentlessly, and I was able to get to this point. Impressive. No, I'm impressed by this. I think it's cool. So for Halloween and everything else, I thought it would be interesting. And when I plug it in, I'm going to attempt this. Let's see if it works. All right, I'm going to touch it. Well, it crashed. Okay, it's back. It's changing. All right, I'm going to hold it up as evidence. Oh my gosh, all right, it's going crazy. So obviously, it's mostly done. When I touch it, it changes and modulates the sound. This is code that I took directly off of this Adafruit page, and I was able to adapt it using, I think, ChatGPT 3 and maybe a little bit of like the Bing like chat. And it's working pretty well. Now, the only problem I have is with the actual hardware. There's some pins that are floating. So a couple, I think like one side of this like doesn't work exactly properly. So how do I solve that? This is kind of small. You know, there's like, it's kind of hard to get my fingers in here. Well, the only thing that's better than, you know, a Ziggurat of this size is one that's 50% bigger. So much so that the other one fits inside of it. So I have made a much, much bigger version of this. I'm going to try to wire it up and have a working version by Halloween. But yes, I'm not letting this project rest. I also think that the black looks kind of cool, although it is nice that this white is translucent and I can actually make lights kind of shine through it. So this has been one of my kind of test projects to see if I can use a large language model to just take code that I find on the internet, give it enough instructions about the hardware I'm working with, and get working prototypes and how many cycles it takes. And I'm kind of counting those cycles and watching them go down further and further. It's taking less and less cycles of improvement to get code that I just find that's not specifically for this hardware and adapt it to my specific situation without errors. It's pretty impressive because it used to take like 10 or 15 cycles. And with prompts being, you know, more limited back then, like that was very frustrating. Now I'm beginning to see signs that with the ability to pull in new information and the ability to feed like PDF data, like, you know, how like a license documentation or library documentation, something like that, that allows you to tell the AI how to use a library. All that stuff has made it a lot easier to prototype and write code that's based on existing code out there. So super exciting, kind of happy to report that it's getting better. Here's a completely reasonable question. For this Ziggurat, can the floating pin issue, so a floating pin is basically a pin that's not connected to anything. And in this particular instance, I have two pins that are registering as though they're being touched all the time. And that can usually happen if something's floating or disconnected. Straight capacitance can set it all the way to the ceiling or all the way to the floor. And if it's disconnected, it tends to stay up. So to solve that problem, the AI just removed those pins from the code and didn't want to work with them anymore. So I was like, all right, like fair enough. That's a lazy approach. I would try that too. But I was able to confirm that everything else worked. So this is a weird thing where you have to look at the documentation for the microcontroller to make sure that those pins aren't special in some way. And then, yes, you can actually do a resistor that ties it to ground. That'll make it so it's normally low. And then when something touches it, it's much more obvious. And the sensor is probably going to have an easier time of being able to recognize that. Now, this microcontroller allows you to pull down internally, like it has internal pull down resistor. So setting it up as such should have fixed that problem, and it sort of did. I haven't been able to get it like super reliable yet. I'm still working on making sure that there's nothing wrong with the physical design because this thing's kind of small, and I can't really get my fingers like inside this part of the pyramid. So no such problem with this guy. I can get my whole hand in here, so it's perfect. So yeah, really cool to see that these large language models are helping out programmers and people like me who don't program that often to be able to get started working on things that are documented online, but maybe not made for the specific platform you're looking for. Okay, I'm picturing Kody in a Grim Reaper suit playing that with a, I guess, fog machine and lights on Halloween. So my costume last year for Halloween was the Grim Reaper costume, and then one of those LED masks playing like a really creepy, slow video of the Queen's face, like giving a speech. So you're not far off, honestly. If you add the fog machine, then you have just looked back a year into the past. Yes, fog. All right, cool. All right, so a couple things this week that I wanted to just mention. Is anybody, I don't know if anybody knows what's up with this, but like I've been trying to do some general OSINT in California, as I usually do. This is part of like some OSINT training I was planning on doing, and everything is off. You cannot access, and this little cartoon bear wasn't very forthcoming about the purpose. So I don't know if something's going on with this. I don't know if it's scheduled maintenance or whatever, and I haven't had a chance to check to see if it's back up yet. But kind of unusual to see the entire California business services database and web portal taken offline. Again, not really sure if anything's going on here, but as an OSINT person, I just noticed like something's up. Like I'm not able to access the trove of data from the California Secretary of State. That's usually like my first thing that I train people on, just because it's such like they just have so much information. It's great. So yeah, kind of sad to see this taken down. I guess we'll see why. But I noticed that like a lot of the things you would normally have to do as a business through the website are now done manually. So not totally sure what's going on here. Hopefully everything's fine over there. We also had some new videos come out. So on the YouTube channel, we had Hacked Twice. This was where we were talking about initial access brokers and how they will resell the same breached account over and over and over, and how there was one case where there was a victim's files that were encrypted 6 times because the 2 hackers that had broken in were running encryptors simultaneously. And those encryptors were seeing the other encryptors' encrypted files and being like, hey, that doesn't match my file extension, and encrypting it back and forth forever. So kind of an interesting thing to see that this cybercrime segment has started spawning these new behaviors where multiple attackers will all crowd into the same breach network at the same time. And things like this can happen where nobody gets paid. Because if your stuff gets encrypted 6 times by 2 different ransomware gangs, you can basically kiss your stuff goodbye. That's too much. That is too many times. All right, so we also have Angelina's video that went up 8 days ago, but I didn't do the news stream last week. So if you haven't seen Angelina on making and testing an aircraft spoofing detector, it talks about ADS-B, how airplanes detect each other and avoid collisions, and disturbingly how easy it is to spoof that, as well as how she has worked on detecting those sorts of spoofing attacks. So check them out. We're now putting out videos. I'm hoping to get back in the habit of having a video out every day of the week. So make sure to subscribe if this is your first time seeing it, because you will join the 52,000 people that are going to be able to see these every day when they come out. All right, next up. I am going to cover this later in the week, but this was shared by Matthew Van Hoff, so I know it's serious. This was an interesting novel HTTP 2 reset attack. It's a distributed denial of service attack. I just wanted to mention it for people that are nerds and like want to see like kind of breaking news in denial of service attacks and how these are evolving, I'm going to go over this more on the news segment. Again, just something that's a little timely. It came out on October 10th. So if you're looking for the breaking news and you don't want to wait, then do check out this article. All right, so on to things that are dangerous. So I really like ripping apart electronics and making new electronics from them. I took this out of a CNC, I believe, that I got at Goodwill for like $1. This was ripped out of a expired disposable vape device. And then these two devices were both purchased on AliExpress for, I think this was maybe 75 cents, and this one was 30 cents. So what does this all do together? Well, this battery gets charged and discharged by this board right here. This is a LiPo charging circuit. And then this right here is a Bluetooth audio adapter. So you connect to this via Bluetooth from your phone, computer, whatever else, and it has a port that actually made it smaller. Oh, wait, here we go. There we go. And it has a audio jack port right here where you can plug in headphones. It actually does not sound bad. And it also can do out to a speaker. So in this case, I have it going directly to the CNC speaker. It's like relatively loud. It's like not super loud, but it's loud enough you can hear songs. And if you amplify it with like, I used a Starbucks cup, it's actually loud enough. Like I would say that you could listen to this and not be too disappointed. Is it beautiful audio? No, it's not. And is this a little bit sketchy? Yes, I soldered on a switch here so you can turn it on and off like onto this LiPo board, like in a very sketchy way. And of course, like working with a ripped out battery and resoldering on it live is dangerous. So you should be careful while doing it. But I was pretty happy with how this super, super cheap, like speaker setup could be put together. If you wanted to put together like a hidden speaker and like prank someone or make just like a basic like Bluetooth streaming device, this seems to work pretty well. Now, I think that if you just remove this like really terrible CNC speaker and you just plugged in like a normal stereo to this audio jack, like the audio would actually be pretty good here. I just like the fact that I can make it battery powered because it should last. These are pretty beefy little batteries, so it should last, I want to say, like a day or so. I mean, if you're just streaming like continuously, I'm going to do an experiment. I actually haven't tested, but I'm just kind of estimating here based on how this has been sipping power so far. But yeah, kind of a cool little project, taking ripped apart electronics and making something new out of it. These components are super cheap. You can find them on Amazon, and I will list them if you want to see how easy it is to make your own Bluetooth receiver with a speaker. I will say that just going to your local Goodwill and finding like a loud children's toy is probably the best way to come off on a speaker like this that is cheaper than the ones you'd find online. I got a really nice one from Adafruit for a couple of dollars. It was like, I think $4 or $5, and it is quite loud, I have to admit. But this one is reasonably loud as well, and I got this for $1 at Goodwill. So definitely check things out. And upcycling, destroyed electronics, I think is something that's a lot of fun. Okay. Here is a here's a question. Is Hack the Box better? Is Hack the Box better than what? I need some clarity. All right. So an evil see and say would be cool. I actually agree with you on that. The wiring inside of it was pretty simple, and I could just take the same ingredients here and just kind of like wire everything up and customize like the outputs. You can just play wave files arbitrarily, and I think that that's really funny. So yeah, there's definitely some stuff you could do. All right, so I observed on TikTok a trend of baristas getting really upset at Ed Sheeran. I wasn't really sure what was going on, but it seems like there's some sort of phenomena going on at Starbucks. And when I went into the comments, lots of people were saying that their shifts had just been torture because people were unable to stop this song from just playing over and over and over. So like people were shocked that they weren't alone in this like Ed Sheeran like hell that just kept going back to the same song no matter what they selected. So yeah, I don't really know what's going on here. I will say it's not me. Somebody accused me of doing this with Wi-Fi Nugget. If I could, I might have to seriously talk myself down from doing it because I will admit this is really funny, but people are really suffering here. I think it's time. I think it's time to stop doing this. If you are doing it, or if you know who is doing it, they've suffered enough. They're gonna have to listen to Christmas music soon. There's no need to do this to them. So yeah, if you know anything about this, I'm all ears. I'm very interested. I've just heard a lot of people at Starbucks are now over this particular artist for having heard it for the last week or so without any ability to get it to stop. All right. Moving on. It's about that time of year. I have printed out my holiday Terminator, which I do seasonally, of course. And this year I'm choosing to give it the body of a pumpkin. So I like to print out these things called pumpkin legs, which I will show on the next stream. They're basically kind of like dog like Chihuahua, almost like legs that you stick into the bottom of the pumpkin, so it like stands and looks like a small. I would describe it as like a small dog. So giving that small dog then a Terminator head that is wired to shout at people that take candy out of the candy bowl is kind of my plan so far for the front of the house. I understand that you can commercial things, but I think there's not a lot of like off-brand shouting Terminator like pumpkin dogs. So that is my electronics project for Halloween. Obviously, I'm working on some other stuff too, but that's the one that I kind of like finished now, and you guys can look forward to some pictures of the finalized pumpkin dog. It's actually right now I'm missing one of the pumpkin legs, so I'm gonna have to print more. So it only has 3 legs, but it is intimidating, I will say. Why don't they just turn off the radio? They're not allowed to. I don't know if you guys have ever been in a coffee shop when it doesn't have music, but it gets creepy. You can hear every click. You can hear like every single like cough or sniffle or whatever else. You can hear the conversation the person is having next to you and start taking sides like immediately. So coffee shops without music are just not a viable proposition. Like a denial of service attack, like playing Ed Sheeran over and over and over, like at a certain point the employees just have to suffer like and deal with it, because it's worse to have a coffee shop that is dead silent. It is creepy, it is weird, and is not conducive to anybody having a good time. What nightmare am I looking at? Yes. This is my Terminator that I actually got on Thingiverse. So if you check out on Thingiverse, there's a number of different prints. This one is like by default human size. I think I actually had to scale this bad boy down because it wouldn't fit on the Prusa. And the Prusa is pretty big. So yeah, this was large. It might actually fit on like my Creality Ender. I don't know, because those things are constantly down and I've given up on them, at least for now. But yeah, this was a print that took about 24 hours. It's relatively little infill, so it's quite light, but it's also very strong. And it has this skull cap that is printed separately that allows you to put electronics on the inside. So obviously I'll be lighting up the eyes. I printed it in white so that it would be translucent, and we are going to be spray painting it later today to make it silver. So yeah, looking forward to how this this comes out. No Christmas this year. Kody has come into Goodwill. Yeah, I love going to 2 different places for electronics that are a little unusual. And I got this habit from the Hackaday SuperCon that I went to, where I got to talk to some people who were big time cosplayers who had to kind of scavenge for some of the electronics they used in their costumes. And they would go to Goodwill and also to the dollar store. And for the dollar store, it's often electronics that are getting dumped. You know, it's like stuff that didn't really sell, and they have a bunch extra, so they're being sold for significantly under what it actually costs to make them. And you can take them apart and get some really interesting things. Like I got a bunch of, I don't know if you've ever seen those like little like helicopter balls that are like an orb that has like a 2-bladed helicopter that just kind of hovers around. It's got IR sensors, it's got IR blasters, it's got motors, it's got a battery, and if you take the skin off, it actually flies a couple miles before it dies. So you can get all sorts of wacky, crazy stuff at the dollar store if you're looking for electronics that are, you know, like $1, but seriously marked off. If you are going to a Goodwill, you'll tend to find things like really discounted, like children's toys that are just smashed and destroyed, and they have like, you know, like peanut butter like put in them, and like, you know, a child has chewed on every single part of it. But the speaker inside is still good. So if you're looking for salvaging components, like often like nobody would want to take these toys home to their child because they're like so physically destroyed or just so disgusting that the only thing that it's really good for anymore is parts. So I don't feel too bad about this just because I would, if I was a child, I would be sickened by the state of many of these toys. But yeah, so if you're looking for a good place to get, especially things like speakers and that sort of thing, your local Goodwill is a great place, as well as the local dollar store, because a lot of those kids' toys are, or other electronics toys are so marked down that the components inside, like it's more expensive to just buy them on Amazon. So yeah, I'm really really pleased about learning this trick. It allowed me to work on a number of different projects that would have been kind of too expensive or required me to wait for things to be shipped here. Where I live, it takes at least like 4 days, usually maybe 5 days, for electronics to get to me when I need something. So if I run into a dead end on one of my electronics projects and I want to solve it, often it's just a trip to the dollar store or to Goodwill to rip out the speaker on some component and be able to finish what I'm working on. Yeah, thrift stores are also good. I just find that they tend to be cherry picked, whereas like I'm looking for literal. This is like a dumpster dive almost. Like I'm looking for like electronics garbage to like remix into other cool stuff, and a lot of this stuff also will inspire me to work on like a cybersecurity or a hacking related project where I'll see a toy that has like an ability I think is really cool or interesting, and I think like, oh, what if you like weaponized it or made it evil or something like that? So, yeah, some very cool stuff. Um, all right, so that is most of what I've been working on this week. Those are the videos we had come out. I'm really happy, again, that we're going to be having probably one video per day from now going forward. So look forward to some more cutouts and some more great content on the Security Forward channel. And, per always, I have to shout out our Discord server. We've had some people sharing some really interesting like AI related things on the server. And yeah, I'm just like, I'm very interested in AI, and getting to see people like talking about the challenges that are had by red teams, like, or blue teams, like figuring out like how to abuse and protect these systems is really cool. It's like an evolving discussion. So if you want to join our Discord community, feel free to do so. It is nuggets.lol, nugget.lol is the short link that'll get you there. And if you have a question that you want answered, you can always go to our live chat section and drop it there. I also make sure to, oh yeah, the live Q&A specifically. I also make sure to let everybody know if the chat's not happening, both on Twitter and here. So if you want to get a heads up that like I'm not doing it, yeah, see, I cried too. But yeah, so if you want to get heads up on this, it's probably the best way to stay up with our community. Yeah. Nugget.lol. Yes, thank you, James. Nugget.lol. I find that if you want to get a cheap web domain, the .lol is still a gold mine. Okay. So that is just about all the time I have today. Just about. I could probably still do a couple more questions, but let's recap. What am I interested in this week? AI for prototyping. So if I want to make this honeypot that I talked about in the beginning of this show, I have to take this big bunch of scribbles and convert it into working code. Now, a programmer would have a very specific process for doing this. They would write tests and whatever else. But what if I just ran right through this and used Bing and ChatGPT to write the majority of this code and kind of flowed from step 1 to step 2, step 3, step 4, and then combined all 4 pieces of code into one working thing? Well, that's exactly what I'm going to try. So working on new workflows for prototypes, especially for people that are working on cybersecurity or hacking related things, like being able to make your own tools. In this case, I'm making a defensive tool, but I'm rapid prototyping it using a combination of AI and then like my own human logic for the way that this should work and feedback that I get as it evolves. So yeah, pretty cool to see how these tools have made it for people that kind of casually program, maybe don't like program every day, are able to make code. They're able to make functioning prototypes that actually work. Now, are they secure? Are they efficient? Are they elegant? No, they probably are not. But that's unfortunately still going to meet the minimum requirement for a lot of use cases. So being able to get it done fast and maybe efficiently is certainly the gain here. All right, so here's a really good question. So I specialize in Wi-Fi attack and defense. This is a question that comes up a lot, and that is, let's say I've made a deauthentication detector. Now, a deauthentication attack is an attack that basically, how would I describe it? It is a denial of service attack that has, all right, so let me back up. This attack will work against WPA2 networks, which is the majority of current Wi-Fi networks, and it will allow you to kick devices off of that network. It will not work against WPA3 networks, and it will not work against WPA2 networks that have been updated. So let's just set some expectations there. Now, if I'm an attacker and I'm kicking you off of your network, I generally have one of two goals. The first is to try to crack your Wi-Fi password. This is no longer strictly necessary, but it makes the process faster. And most traditional tools will kick devices off your network in order to grab a password hash when they reconnect, and then they'll leave it at that. The second intent could be a denial of service attack, where you're trying to kick every device off the network or a specific device off the network and prevent them from using the network at all. Now, these are really easy to spot because it's a flood of deauthentication attacks that are attacking all the time. It is something that is very, very hard to miss. You'll get like hundreds, if not thousands of deauthentication packets, and that's a sign that you're under a denial of service attack. So if you're not seeing that, then it's a pretty good sign that nobody's trying to jam your Wi-Fi network that way. Now let's take a step back. If they are trying to run a tool that's like bside-ng or something that kicks devices off your network in order to grab a password hash, then a couple of deauthentications a day could be a sign that somebody is like probing at your network. Now, there are some other things that should be put into consideration, and that is scope. So when you start up the Wi-Fi deauth detector, for example, if you're not telling it like to only pay attention to a single network, it's going to report deauthentications against any network. Now, there's two different cases where this could happen. This could be your own Wi-Fi network telling devices that are leaving to leave, basically. Like they're switching, they're leaving the network, and the deauthentication is like the final step for it to see it off. So that's like a normal thing that happens. And if it's only one or two, then it could just be normal device activity. Now, you could also have neighbors that have like gateways that are more aggressive and that, kick devices off or are kicking devices off, and you would still get an alert that deauthentications are flying around in the air. So keep an eye on exactly what that deauthenticator is, deauth detector is listening to. If it's listening to just your network and you're getting deauthentication attacks a couple of times per day, that's a little bit suspicious. But if you're, for example, in a dense urban area, your neighbors, local businesses, whatever, they all have their own internet routers that might be doing like legitimate deauthentication where they're kicking a device off the network or somebody's leaving and their device is saying, I'm leaving, and they're like, okay, disconnect. And if you're seeing those, it might not be a sign of attack. So unfortunately, I have to tell you that it is difficult to tell. You would need to do a little bit more digging, and you would need to make sure that you're only listening in on the network that you're interested in, because you don't care if your neighbor's network is being attacked or if there's a bunch of like routers around you just doing normal stuff. And then you would need to look at the frequency. So you need to determine, is this once or twice per day? Is this a pattern that like matches like what like a Linux script that we know about like looks like? That would be how I would look at it. So short little bursts of like deauthentication like requests out of nowhere that are like similar to what like I'm gonna say like bside-ng or something like that would send. That's a sign that maybe somebody's running one of these tools nearby, especially if it's hitting a device on your network and there's no good reason. It's just you're going about your business and it's getting hit. But yeah, like just running like the deauth detector without specifying which network, it's going to give you false positives all day. Someone type the Discord invite, please. I'm racing to get back to work. Well, first of all, Brandon, I hope you get to work. And second, it's nugget.lol. Cool. All right. I think that's just about what I've got today. So thank you for everybody who's asking good questions. We are, of course, going to be doing another stream on Friday. So stick around. It should be around the same time. And we're going to be going over the hacker news of the week and also last week, because I missed it last week. So expect to see Killian on the stream. We'll go through and break down all the stuff that's happened over the past 2 weeks and give you the highlights, including this article that I teased but have not gone into yet, because there's some interesting distributed denial of service attacks going on that are worth jumping into. All right, so as always, this stream is supported by Varonis. If you like the stream, if you want to keep watching, and if you want the content to keep flowing, then you can support the stream by going to... I almost went to nugget.lol. That's not it. That is for the Discord community. Varonis.com/Kody. That's Kody. They do check to see how many people go through this link, and we've got a lot of great events going on that are super interesting. And I'm not the only free content that Varonis puts out. So this is something that I'm really excited about. This is the Salesforce community attacks that Varonis disclosed earlier this year, kind of turned into a lab. So if you want to see in action what it's like for a attack to pop off that steals a bunch of sensitive data from Salesforce, this is the place to go. So you can always, check this out, support the stream just by even going to that link. But I highly recommend you check out this Salesforce demonstration. Again, this is based on recent research that Varonis put out that they actually discovered with their Threat Labs team. And I actually really like the logo. I think it's super cool. I have a bunch of shirts from Varonis Threat Labs, and they are great. But yeah, so check this out. It's going to be October 25th, 2023, 12 p.m. Eastern Time live. And it's going to go through some of the discoveries that the Varonis team made that were announced earlier this year and actually show you what it looks to exploit them, so you don't have to imagine it. All right, so we will see you all on... oops, sorry. Everybody is in perpetuity on their comments. I've left you up. We will see everybody on Friday. Good to see you all, and see you next time. Bye, everyone. Oh, there we go. Bye, everyone.